Josh. Thanks for all you do, Joliet. And we're joined this week by our friend of the show, attorney Karen Conti. Attorney Conti is not only an attorney here in Chicago, but she does a lot of media appearances. And I wanted to talk to her about that. Welcome back to the program, Attorney Conti.
Hi, Steve.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because again, you do a lot of legal analysis. It's been kind of the Super Bowl recently of cases, because it seems like there's a lot of the Rittenhouse case, the case down in Georgia. Now we have the Supreme Court in session, and all of this is going on. And you get a chance to talk about all of these cases, isn't that right?
Yeah, I do. I get called upon by a couple of national networks that call me. I've got a regular segment on a national syndicated show. I've got my own radio show on WGN, and I get called upon by WGN to do a regular segment at least twice a week. So I've got all these media outlets, and it's fun. So it keeps me on my toes because I have to keep up to speed on all these cases. And you're right. We have had so many cases this year. If you think about all the high profile, the Jussie Smollett and gun cases and school shootings and all kinds of cases that now are, some of them or many of them are on cameras in the courtroom. So the people are watching them and they're really following them. And it's, who needs Netflix when you can watch real live court drama? So I get called upon to do that, and I really enjoy it very, very much.
Well, I have to agree with you that it's I remember watching O.J. Simpson. I watched it. I was glued to the television, watched it all. The whole thing. I even listened to it on the radio when I wasn't there. So I really followed it closely. Same thing with this Rittenhouse case. I did some streaming where I had other attorneys, and we commented on as the streaming was going, kind of live commentary. That was a lot of fun. Took up my whole day, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it can be distracting from your real job.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, it's hard sometimes to keep up with all of this. And when someone calls you and says, "Hey, Attorney Conti, can you appear and comment on it?" You've got to do your homework, isn't that right?
You do. And for instance, I just got called a few minutes ago, just before we started, to do something at 7 o'clock tonight on the issue of the school shooting up in Michigan, parents being charged. And, I have to research the law in Michigan on, do parents have to keep their guns locked? What are the laws that could possibly be used? What is involuntary manslaughter? What is voluntary manslaughter? What are the possible sentences? What are the facts leading the prosecutor to believe that they can sustain a conviction on it? What were the facts in this case? Is there precedent from other jurisdictions that allowed parents to be prosecuted? So there's a lot of angles that you have to research. Now, fortunately, we have the internet to do that. But it still takes time because I want to be well-rounded and I want to be able to explain the possibilities of what could happen here.
Absolutely, and again, as you just mentioned, you just kind of rattled off all of these issues that just for that one case and how it all comes. How much is in play with just one case, and yet we're faced with all of these different cases throughout the nation that take a little bit of legal analysis to kind of go through it to help people understand, right? Because I think it's hard for attorneys to understand, right?
Even as much as who the players are. Who's the judge in this case? He's been practicing, been on the bench for 35 years. He's pro-defense. He's pro-prosecution. Who's the prosecutor? Is he experienced? Who's defending? I mean, all those things are important, too, because the players in these high-profile cases really can make or break the prosecution and the defense.
Yeah, it's so important. And I want to now. As I mentioned, you also get a chance to interview a lot of people, not only attorneys but other people with all these issues with your radio show. Again, Karen, Attorney Conti has a radio show on WGN. It's heard every Sunday, and then she makes appearances on the shows on WGN to comment on these cases. Talk a little bit about the people that you get to meet in your role as a media personality.
Well, going back to OJ, when OJ was going on, and I had a radio show many years ago. I mean, I interviewed Marcia Clark. I had Robert Shapiro as a regular on my show. I've interviewed Heidi Fleiss, the Hollywood Madam, who came on my show several times. Vincent Bugliosi was a regular. He was the guy who prosecuted Charles Manson and wrote the great book Helter Skelter. I've interviewed Alan Dershowitz. I've interviewed litigants in all kinds of cases. People, children who have brought lawsuits. Just almost anybody. Like this coming weekend, following weekend, I have a woman who is one of the high-profile. The profilers from the FBI, who, if you ever saw Mindhunter, she was one of the women depicted in that show, and she was one of the pioneers in the idea of profiling serial killers. And she just wrote a book that I'm reading and going to finish soon. It's just fascinating about how these people do their work. So I get to meet a lot of interesting people, a lot of smart people, and try to just synthesize a little bit about what their knowledge is, get them to speak in plain English, so everyone can understand.
Yeah.
That's always a challenge, because when you got smart people and lawyers, they all want to talk like lawyers and smart people. Not that you're dumbing it down, but you want everyone to understand what they're talking about. And so it's fun and it's a challenge, and I keep them as friends, which is always very nice.
Well, I knew that you had you did some good name dropping there. That's good. And I know that on my own show we talked about your involvement with the Gacy case, and so you have a vast experience with so many different types of law and cases. It's kind of again, happy to have you on the show to talk about it. Talk a little bit now, a little bit about non-lawyers because you get to. How do you pick the people that you put on your radio show?
Well, first of all, I like topical things, Steve. So if I look and see in the news that there's a case about a school shooting or gun rights, I always go for people who have experience in those kinds of cases or those kinds of issues. I try to keep it local, because I think people like to hear from Chicago-based experts and lawyers, as opposed to someone from California or from somewhere else. And fortunately for us here in Chicago, we have wonderful law schools like University of Chicago and Northwestern and University of Illinois. So we have a plethora of really smart academics if I need that. Experts, ballistic experts, if I need that. If I need lawyers, obviously we have some of the best lawyers in the country here. So and then I always want to make sure that they speak well. And when I say speak well, as I said before, what I pride myself in is I'm a girl from Berlin, so I didn't start my life speaking with big words, and so I still don't. And I think that maybe makes me better at having a radio show where I'm not talking to lawyers. I'm talking to real people who don't know what all these words might mean. Writ of certiorari and words that make no sense to the average person. So I look for people who can break down the issues like I can, and to really explain them well, and can speak well to my listeners.
Well, again, I think you do a wonderful job. I love listening to you on the radio and on television. I think that everybody benefits by your analysis. I think you do a great, and again, you do bring it down so we all can understand it. Because even as attorneys, it's hard to understand a lot of stuff. But you have the vast experience to bring this all together. So first,